Hello and welcome back to a brand new Pick a Side stream on BR Live. Today,
Yes, sir.
we're going to look over the 2025 NBA free agents, the top 8. There's a lot of pretty good free agents, not unrestricted, but people that have player options that can make things spicy in the offseason.
Definitely some really good ball players. That being said, I'd be remiss if I didn't say shout out to Team USA. A great comeback victory over Serbia. We saw Steph Curry just have his breakout performance with the Olympic basketball team. Of course, LeBron James triple-double. Kevin Durant in the clutch. And the guy who's not getting a lot of credit, Joel Embiid, who was arguably the best player on the court in that fourth quarter. Awesome victory onto the gold medal game against France. But again, let's talk about some free agents. It should be a good combo.
I'm just happy I got Brad Stevens as GM, man. If not, Derek White would be on this list. Drew Holiday would be on this list. KP would have been a free agent this offseason.
Yeah.
Or if not, he would have been maybe next offseason. Man, I'm just happy we got the core locked up because they be headliners here, you know?
It's something to be happy about because your best player didn't get any minutes.
It's funny. The best player really didn't need to be the overwhelming best player, not just in the Olympics, but of course we know that NBA Finals.
Yeah, man.
They're kind of proving that they can do it without him.
Oh, for
I think
sure.
that's what they're showing us.
It's
right?
just it's not a huge necessity for him to be an amazing star for them to win, and it's showing that. Jason Tatum.
Oh, I mean, they ran through the East pretty easily, so.
Agreed. Really didn't need Tatum. Similar like USA. Shout out to Team USA.
Before we get into this top 8 list, we're not going to have one player on this list out of respect for the other players because this one player tends to overshadow everybody because
Every
of
time.
how great he is. It's LeBron James. Now, LeBron James at this age, we don't know when he's going to retire, but if he wants to, he can very well be a free agent next offseason if he wants to.
I've been very consistent on this. LeBron will retire a Laker. It's always great for conversation purposes. Oh, what if he teams up with Luka? What if he teams up with Jokic? What if he goes and plays for the Spurs with Victor? That'd be awesome. Of course, all these hypotheticals they lead for fun conversations. But at the end of the day, he's going to retire a Los Angeles Laker. I do firmly believe that. But again, he deserves conversation.
Left the Lakers 3 years ago, to be honest.
I don't know. Listen, WCF 2 years ago.
A little late.
Lakers still have a respectable team, and as long as LeBron James is on that team,
They
they're going
definitely
to make
have
some
like
noise.
the 7th or 8th best chance to win the chip.
Okay, that's not rude.
He doesn't like that.
I think that's a
I don't
give or take,
love it,
you
but
know?
at the same time, it's not a wrong thing to say.
Now, the first free agent we're going to get into is Alex Caruso. He's coming in at this list at number 8 where he is rightfully deserves
No,
to be.
he's not.
That's it. He's no higher.
No.
You can't make any argument
No,
for it.
I can make it.
No, Alex Caruso is number 8.
No.
He just got traded to OKC.
He did.
And he's on a very team-friendly contract. How much is he going to pay? Like $8 million to
Yeah,
OKC?
very cheap, very
I mean, it's
cheap.
a
Food
steal.
think
He's
it's 4 for
probably the
36 or
biggest.
something.
Yeah, he's the biggest steal in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
Not only with his current contract, but what they were able to trade for him to get him.
Shout out to Josh
Yeah,
Giddey.
that's an absolute steal. He is just the definition of a steal. He does that on defense too. One of the league leaders when it comes to steals. Also, yes, there is an argument for him to be made at one spot higher. If 6 through 1, I agree. No, there's definitely a conversation one spot higher. You know my opinion on Alex Caruso. I think he's the best perimeter defender in basketball, right there next to Drew Holiday. He's able to stretch the floor. He's able to handle the basketball also. It's going to be so much fun seeing him in Oklahoma.
We're expecting an extension from him, right? At least I think I am from OKC. I don't think his contract, it's not going to be like Derek White level or Drew Holiday level, right? These guys that got like 30 to 40 type $1 million. I'm expecting him to be more in that 20 to 25 at a max type range.
He's
I
not
don't
worth
think so.
Derek White money.
Isaiah Hartenstein just got 30 mil. That's the only reason
That was
why I
out of
say
necessity.
How
I
old's
can-
Caruso? 30?
He probably can make 30. He's an
No,
older
he's
player,
30 years
though.
old, I'm
Correct. I
saying,
was going to
yes,
say,
yeah.
this is going to be his last big payday.
Yeah.
I can see a team, if they want to overpay, yes, he can definitely see over 30 M's.
I'm expecting him to stay in OKC.
I'm
I know we're
not.
just talking about the free agents. I think he's going to stay
Personally, it's not signed and sealed for me. They only traded Josh Giddey away. Didn't have to give up any picks for him. So maybe there's not a huge... There's already not a huge inclination that he's sees a long-term vision with Oklahoma. I mean, of course, if they win a championship, it'll be a lot easier to sell him to come back. But to me, I don't see it set in stone. Oklahoma City has a lot of players that they have to pay eventually. So to me, I'm not sure if they're going to decide to spend, again, like I see it, $30 million on Alex Caruso.
I just think they have a couple years until they have to pay J-Dub. They have to pay Chet, Case, and Wallace. So this is a pretty good situation where Caruso can get paid and still win.
Yeah, that's why they're overpaying role players. Isaiah Hartenstein, he's a great player, but he got a little bit overpaid. But that's the market for a center like him. We saw Jared Allen just get $30 million. Alex Caruso, listen, I think he's a great role player. I'm not going to overrate him like Drew overrates him consistently. Because you said he's the best defender next to Drew Holiday. He ain't better than Jaden McDaniels on defense.
On the perimeter?
No, he ain't better than Jaden McDaniels.
Brown?
Yes. Alex Caruso is also one of the most versatile perimeter defenders in the game.
More versatile than Jaylen Brown?
Yes.
Ooh,
I don't know about that.
that's tough.
No,
I don't know about that.
There's no way Jaylen Brown's guarding a guard the way that Alex Caruso can.
There's no way Caruso's guarding Luka the way Jaylen Brown just did.
Well, I saw Lou Dort can
Brown, I think,
play
is
defense.
better against bigger, stronger defenders. Caruso's probably better against shiftier defenders.
Honestly, there's really no player that Alex Caruso can't guard on the perimeter.
Jalen Brunson cooks him consistently.
Jalen Brunson's also.
You just
Jalen
said
Brunson.
no player. That's one player. I just named you. Jalen Brunson.
Jalen Brunson also cooked Drew Holiday, also cooked Derek White, also cooked every member of the Boston Celtics.
I'm just saying, you said no, and I mentioned
But he
one.
can also stop him for a game.
No, he can't.
No?
Game?
No,
he
no.
gets something for a game.
No, he can't.
I mean, he had
Jalen Brunson's too
Brunson
good
had
for
bad
him.
games.
Now you're
against the
underrating
Pacers.
Alex
Brunson had
Caruso.
bad
Now
games
this
against
is
the
how
Pacers.
a conversation
every
comes
time,
full circle.
Every time the Knicks face the Bulls consistently in the regular season. Every time Brunson meets Caruso, it's a full course
I
meal.
will say this. Alex Caruso definitely struggles the most with Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson definitely has his number.
Bucket getter.
So I'm looking at these teams right now. What team do you think would be like the dream destination for Alex Caruso if he were to go?
I'll get it out the way.
to,
I would love
any
if he
other
would,
team.
I would love if he could come back
Guy
home.
never quits.
I will always want Alex Caruso back in a Lakers uniform, but trying to think outside the box and trying to understand, of course, with all this, the new player agreement and knowing that teams are very restricted on who they can bring in. To me, a re-sign with Oklahoma City, of course, that's definitely would be one. Number two, depending on how it looks and how this tenure with the Dallas comes up in these next couple of years, or how they look this upcoming season, excuse me, Dallas would be a pretty awesome fit for Alex Caruso. You add perimeter defense, of course, can stretch the floor, can honestly give you any type of versatility on the defensive side. But really what you need is that guy that can space when the ball's in Luka Doncic and or Kyrie Irving's hand. And of course, we know that Alex Caruso can do so. And we've seen him be able to do so in a championship winning effort.
Do you think Caruso, because I'm just looking at people who have, or teams that have cap space in 25, 26, it's mostly bad teams or non-playoff teams, Houston, the Nets, Washington. The only teams that are like semi-playoff relevant, the Pelicans projected to get $64 million in cap space. They have a couple of free agents, of course. Atlanta's like a playing team in the East, but I don't really know if they're going to go for Caruso. Orlando, but you really got Jalen Suggs and KCP. And OKC is, in terms of top 10 in cap space, is 10. So there's not a ton of contenders that are going to have money, to sign him.
Orlando. Now that intrigues me.
I think he'd be a backup.
Yeah.
Do you think he'd want to be a backup at this point, though?
He's been a bench player, or one of the first off the bench.
I think I don't know. I think having him, Suggs, and KCP, like I'd like to get one like real legitimate ball handler, facilitator of offense.
Caruso can do that. I
would want someone on a high level.
But like people didn't think Derek White could do that. But obviously he does that at a very high level for the Boston Celtics.
Yes, he does.
I'm just letting it be known. Caruso has that skill set.
I will say, wild card destination, they have cap space. I think him in Charlotte would be really good. I think LaMelo,
I see that vision.
Caruso,
that's
Brandon
cool.
Miller. I think Caruso, they have the money to pay him, and he would slot in at that 2 spot and be a real good complement with LaMelo and Brandon Miller.
I really like that destination. LaMelo, obviously, it's a matter of him staying on the court, but when he's playing basketball, he's one of the better guards in the game, can give a little bit more effort on defense. That's where Caruso can complement.
Now, next up on this list is someone that you thought Caruso should be
be
over.
This guy should
and
be
the
it.
comments are about to see, it's really not a debate. The number 7 is Miles Turner,
And if
who
the people
is
in
an
the comments-
unrestricted free agent.
If the people in the comments are losing their mind mind over me saying Alex Caruso deserves to be one spot higher than Miles Turner. Turn the tape on with Alex Caruso, and you'll understand why I'm obsessed with his game.
Turn the tape on Miles Turner. He just averaged 17 and 8 in the playoff run.
Again, Miles Turner is not moving anyone to that measure. He's not as great of a defender as he maybe once was. He really was a foul merchant because he was blocking a lot of shots, but also was giving up a lot of fouls on the opposite side. Can stretch the floor. Wasn't that great of a three-point shooter, but 17 points is 17 points, I guess.
He was one of the best shot blockers in the league this past season.
Yeah, he was.
League leaders.
And also, I will say this. Blank slate, OKC starts up their offseason. This past offseason, let's revisionist history right now. Caruso, they haven't traded for him yet. They haven't signed Isaiah Hartenstein. Miles Turner's on the market. Who's the first guy they go after?
Alex Caruso.
Yeah, okay.
Because they actually need to continue to add to their perimeter defense.
I think they need Miles Turner.
Also,
more.
Lou Dortz is a negative on offense. Now, with the idea that you have Caruso, Lou Dortz can go to the bench and you don't drop off on defense. You don't.
I mean, I think you could also just have Case and Wallace have some more burn over Lou Dort there.
But we saw Kaysen go out and break
struggled,
it up.
Yeah, but he had a huge stretch. But the regular season, I mean,
Agreed.
he had 80 games being a tremendous three-point shooter and a rookie. But I think specifically for OKC, when you have Chet there, adding Miles Turner would make more sense for their group.
That's OP.
But how much are you paying him?
I think the contract that Isaiah Hartenstein got isn't too far off from what you would give Turner. I think Turner is like a $30 to $35 million player.
Because I would rather, for OKC, take Isaiah Hartenstein. Better defender, can do... Let me not say that because Miles Turner was just a part of a great historic offense, but knows his role as a connector as well. Talking about Isaiah Hartenstein, not bad when it comes to scoring, also has good touch near the rim. To me, it made a lot more sense whether you take this opportunity now on Hartenstein or you wait one more season for a Miles Turner. I think they made the right move.
I think that's valid because Hartenstein gives them what they were missing. But I say, like, in a blank slate, I told you to pick between those three players because it was obvious it needed big play more than guard play. And I thought that was the biggest need. So if it wasn't Hartenstein and Miles Turner happened to be on the market, I thought he would go over Caruso. He's just more important. And I think maybe 70% of NBA teams would rather have Miles Turner than Caruso.
That's I think team dependent. You have to look what team needs a big, what team needs a stretch five compared to what team could use a high level elite.
Every team needs a stretch
I know,
five.
but every team could use an elite, perimeter
player
defender.
on the perimeter, correct.
How many
especially
true
nowadays.
Who could ball handle, who could shoot the three.
How many true stretch fives are there in the league right now?
You're making me on the spot. Let's go Embiid. We have to put Jokic in here.
Brook Lopez?
Miles Turner, yes. Brook Lopez. Wemby, of course. AD, depending on the day.
AD's not. No.
I think AD, yeah. Vooch probably is off that list now.
Yeah. And nowadays, yeah, it's probably cooked for Vooch, but not many.
KP.
And that's what makes
We
Miles
counting
Turner
Evan
so
Mobley?
important. No. Maybe after this year.
We're about to count Bam after what he's been doing.
For
in the
real,
Olympics.
though.
Out of the teams that have cap space, I think Miles Turner with the Pelicans would do perfect with Zion.
That's a great
Okay,
fit.
That's
I
what
love
they
that.
need the most.
Love
Do you
that.
think the Pacers be willing to move off of him?
No, they
I don't
can't.
think so, too.
I think he's too important to what they do. But if there was one like dream destination that I think of, I think the Pelicans. Yep. Right now, they don't even have a center. So if Turner hits the open market, the Pelicans, who Brandon Ingram is actually next on this list, number 6. We'll talk about him now. Brandon Ingram's an unrestricted free agent.
Yep.
And that's going to give the Pelicans a lot of cap space to play with next offseason. Brandon Ingram is a weird player. I view him in the same category as Zach LaVine. Distressed asset. No team really wants to go after them because they don't fit the team that much. But Brandon Ingram is an exceptional player, just like Zach LaVine is. It's just their value around the league. It doesn't reflect what they actually are as players.
I'll say this about Brandon Ingram, and I feel like it's not a knock to say he reminds me a lot of DeMar DeRozan. Awesome when it comes to scoring in that mid-range. Great passers. Maybe not the best defenders, but has shown that he can be a part of a team that is great on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, you look at the Pelicans, one of the best defenses in basketball this past year. Also, they have Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, who are amazing on the wings. But it's the fact that he, one, is not durable, and two, isn't the best three-point shooter. To me, that becomes a real big knock when it comes to paying players like Brandon Ingram, who is going to be looking for upwards of 45 to 50, maybe 55 million annually. But he is a great player. He's developed and become a really high-level basketball player. The issue is his game's hard to complement with another one to lead to championship basketball.
Yeah, I think the just general feel for Brandon Ingram compared to Zach LaVine is Zach LaVine's contract's just absurd. I think Brandon Ingram, number one, it's been injury concerns, just not being able to stay healthy. Him and Zion on the court, it feels like every year we get like a small sample size. And we're like, if they can do it, they'll be great, and they can never do it.
True.
But the other part is I just don't think he ever really lived up to the hype of what we thought he could be. Right? This is a guy that was a top draft pick. This was a guy that was part of a key part in the AD trade, and we were expecting him to kind of be the face of the Pelicans franchise after they moved off of Anthony Davis. And of course, you get Zion, things change. But the fact that they haven't, or he hasn't, been able to fully put everything together, partly due to injuries, partly just due to fit, partly due to not expanding his game. He has become a better passer, but we would love to see defensively just take a bit of a step forward where you can contribute and be not in the conversation with Herb Jones, but at least just not be a liability out there. Or when we're thinking of Brandon Ingram, thinking about him as just an average to an above average defender. So I do think on the open market, he's going to have some interest, but it is a bit interesting that it seems like he's been dangled out there this offseason and no one seems to be calling. You know, we've talked about Brandon Ingram for Jared Allen swaps for months at this point now, and it hasn't happened. Of course, Jared just got his extension, so that won't probably go down this season. But this is a guy that could go out and give you 20, 25 a night. He's, like you mentioned, Drew, he's a good passer. So as a secondary, third type option, he's solid, but it's hard for his specific skill set to be like a second or third option.
You know, when it comes to Brandon Ingram, he's either going to get traded to a really good team or he's going to sign with a bottom dweller.
You think?
That's kind of how I view him, especially with the amount of cap space teams have right now.
Fair.
The Rockets have the most cap space with 110 mil, but I don't see him going to Houston. Then you have the Nets. Then you have teams like Washington, the Spurs, and the Pistons. And to me, if there's one team that would make a play here, I think the Spurs make a lot of sense to just accelerate the Wemby timeline.
See a Spur type dude.
Honestly, I don't view him. Well, he is a quiet, laid back type of personality, type of guy. He does feel spurry.
Okay. Again, like I said, his game really reminds me of DeMar DeRozan. We saw DeMar DeRozan really blossom as a playmaker because of San Antonio and Greg Popovich. You pair that next to Victor, that could be exciting.
I could see the Nets making a play.
Nets definitely crossed my mind.
I could 100% see him in a Nets jersey.
Cam Thomas, Ingram, Claxton,
and the list.
Cooper Flag.
Oh, if they get Cooper, now we're moving.
Yeah, because they're probably gonna have a top pick. Yeah. Ace Bailey, one of those guys. Mm-hmm. I mean, hey, you know, Brandon Ingram on the Nets. Next up on this list is going to be Julius Randle.
Here we go.
Kind of falls into the same category of like his value across the league isn't what his production is. I mean, he's a 25, 10, and 5 type of guy. He is pretty efficient, even though he's a streaky jump shooter. Julius Randle's Knicks fit, how he fits with the current team is very much in question because there's two sides to the coin. He can either be a detriment or he can be the X factor and is what the team really needs to get over the hump.
What's your gut feeling about that?
I think he's more so in between. I have to see it first to believe it, but I think his game last year was much more bully ball. So it was easier for that to translate into the playoffs, and that's why I was bummed out that I didn't get to see him in a playoff setting. But I think at some point, the regular season version of Randle has to show up in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And I would love to see him with the Knicks, but at the same time, at what cost? What's the contract looking like? Because based on his numbers, he can command 40 to 50 mil. The contract Lauri Markkanen just got, I mean, for what Randle has done, that's probably what his agent is looking at. And I don't know if the Knicks should pay him that much money given how many other players on the roster you can argue are more important to what they do than him.
To me, I look at Julius Randle as an X factor for the New York Knicks. You mentioned how he was more of a bully ball type of player last season. That's exactly what they do need. They need that interior presence, especially going up against the Boston Celtics, where you have probably the best group of perimeter defenders in the association with the Boston Celtics. So it's going to be a more difficult series on Jalen Brunson. I still think that he'll have success, but the X factor in that series becomes Julius Randle and him having his way, of course, in that paint-restricted area. So to me, I still see him as a New York Knick. The only way that I could see him moving away from the New York Knicks is if they were to facilitate a trade. But to me, I feel like he has become the player that we know now in New York, and it'd be very difficult to see him be on a different squad, especially when he is truthfully the piece that started this new rebrand of New York basketball.
He's going to have a big contract offered to him. We'll see if he takes the Jalen Brunson / what we're expecting Mikal route and taking a bit of a pay cut, because we know Brunson left $100+ million on the table. Mikal's already came out and said that he'd be willing to take a pay cut. And Julius Randle, we haven't heard a ton from him, but from what I've gotten is that he wants to buy into this. He wants to buy into the culture. He saw the success the Knicks had last season, and I think he has to be an X factor if the Knicks want to get past Boston, if they want to get to a championship, because although the Knicks made great moves and this roster looks on paper sensational, I still think a secondary creator is desperately needed on this team. You have Jalen Brunson who can create for himself. Mikal can do some as well. You have a guy like Deuce off the bench, but I think really having a guy that for just a few spurts at a time in the first, second, third quarter, Jalen, you don't got to do everything. I could take over for a minute or two. I could be the main facilitator on offense here. That's something that we've seen. We've seen Randle be the number one option for the Knicks, right? We've seen him do this in the past. So if he's able to get back to that, that would be huge for the Knicks.
I don't see him in another jersey that looks right to me. Nothing feels right. I think he belongs in New York, and I'd like to see him there long term. Next up on his list is Rudy Gobert. Now, Rudy Gobert, very controversial figure in the NBA community, but with the Timberwolves, they were the number one ranked defense this past season, largely because of his contributions, and they had great defensive players around him as well. Rudy Gobert has a player option, so he's not an unrestricted free agent. I'd be very, very surprised if he left Minnesota, given what they traded for him, given that they are a team that's in the second apron. So there isn't any way for them to lose Gobert and get better. They're still going to be restricted with their cap. This is an obvious stay put destination for me.
What I'm curious is, does Rudy just pick up this 1 year player option, or does he decline and look for an extension? Because he's 30+ years old at this point. Number one defense, absolutely, but it is a little weird, the fit and everything with Anthony Edwards. You want him to be the focal point. You kind of have a dude that's just clogging up the lane, and that's really, I mean, Anka, his jump shooting, especially in his Olympics and the playoffs, were crazy, but him getting downhill is what he is elite at. So it's tough because Minnesota's in the second apron, like you mentioned. We think Cat's going to be there. Jaden McDaniels seems like if anyone's the odd man out, it's probably him, but it's also risky giving this dude another big extension going into his, 31, 32 age season.
To me, I look at it similarly the way that James Harden thought that it was going to work out in Philadelphia. You accept your player option, and then you work out an extension afterward. The way that I would see that kind of working out is unless they tell Rudy Gobert, we will give you an extension, but you need to help us out here, accept your player option. I'm fully anticipating he rejects his player option because he's going to be getting an insane amount of money. We just watched him win Defensive Player of the Year. There's no reason why he can't be in the running for it again next year, at least be an all-NBA defender as well, like we've seen him do almost every season of his career since he's been an all-star, of course. I look at Rudy Gobert in this moment, I agree, he will be a Timberwolf, but it will cost them.
I have two destinations if he leaves. One of them is the Detroit Pistons. I actually am buying into what they're starting to build. They're actually signing some good NBA players. Tobias Harris has his no-shows.
They finally started to get some space in Rudy Gobert.
Tobias Harris has been a no-show in important moments, but for the regular season, you can count on 16 to 18 a night. And if he's an actual focal point of an offense, he can average like 20 a night.
Yo, stop.
What?
Rudy Gobert, 20 a night?
No, I said Tobias.
Oh, I apologize. I thought you still were talking about Rudy Gobert and the Pistons.
20 a night, though. He's not Derek
for sure.
White.
I'm not claiming. I'm not claiming Caruso's this score. However, Gobert's not going to Detroit. Detroit has to do something of being relevant at all before a player decides in free agency they're going to go to that team.
Well, here's the thing: they got $47 million cap space, and I think Detroit right now with Cade, Tobias, those are at least like two very good NBA players. I think you can maybe somewhat build a team around moving forward. They saw Malik Beasley to a minimum, so they're trying to get some spacing around Cade. I just think Gobert, if he's looking for a big payday, right now, I know we love the idea of Jalen Duren Jalen Duren is legitimately one of the worst defenders in basketball. He cannot guard anything. I know the physical talent is eye-popping. He gets a lot of rebounds. He's a double-double machine. But when you watch him, he gets lost. His positioning is bad. He doesn't block shots. He's a negative defender. And if you want to accelerate this timeline you have with Cade, because they haven't taken advantage of his rookie contract at all, then you need a defensive anchor there. So, yeah, he doesn't provide spacing, but now you have a defensive anchor, and now you just build around that and then Cade's offensive skill set. The other team were the Atlanta Hawks. If Trae Young stays there, Rudy Gobert is a massive upgrade over what Clint Capella offers on both ends of the floor, I think. As a finisher and then defensively, if they're buying into the Onyeka experiment long-term, then it makes sense not to go after Gobert. But if they want to make one more run with Trae Young and actually surround him with another all-star, it'll be Rudy.
Okay.
And the next player on this list is Jamal Murray, who's an unrestricted free agent. Now, the stock is down for Jamal.
Stock is definitely down.
The time to buy the stocks is now. The stock is down because in the Olympics, he was horrible. In the playoffs, he was inconsistent. And now coming into this season where, you could look at on paper, Denver got worse. We're kind of thinking to ourselves, what version of Jamal are we going to get, not only for the regular season, but for the playoffs, and can he stay healthy in a contract year? The decision of the Nuggets paying Jamal Murray the amount of money they probably are going to have to pay him
plus million
is, I think, the future of Denver basketball rides on this decision right here.
They're gonna resign him. They have no choice. That's literally what it is. They have zero choice. All of their future is invested in Jokic, MPJ, of course, Jamal Murray. Yep. That's really the future of the Denver Nuggets. And of course, let's respect Aaron Gordon. We've seen that group of guys be able to elevate and win an NBA championship. Of course, Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world, but it was also with the help of Jamal Murray being one of the best Robins in basketball. So I look at Jamal and understand when he is healthy, when he is on, he is an amazing basketball player and is worth that contract. When he's banged up, when he's been unavailable for you for a year and a half, and then on top of it, this past postseason was banged up, he really does become a negative, and that's where the concern of giving him over $200 million arrives. However, you have no choice. You have to resign him. Yeah,
MPJ, out of all three of those, is the most expendable. Jamal Murray has to be there. How clutch he is down the stretch of games. When he is healthy, the championship run he went on in the finals, averaging 10-plus assists. To me, it's really easy. Like, you sign Jamal Murray, you don't think twice about it. I understand this last playoff run was a little iffy, but we just saw the year before when he was 100%. Like you mentioned, Drew, this is one of the best Robins in the league.
Yeah, you just have to hope that he stays healthy and continues to play at that level, because I think that's what I mean when I say the future of Denver basketball rides on this, because we know that he's going to get signed. It's about him living up to that contract when he does. This was his first real blemish on his resume. Yeah. So now we got to see how he bounces back from it. Number 2 is Jimmy Butler, who has a player option, but he's been vocal about wanting an extension. I don't believe the Heat are going to give it to him.
I don't think the Heat should.
They shouldn't, because I think this is a team that's not a championship contender. Nope. You see that they already are building young players on this team to have a future. You can't tie yourselves to this type of contract. And I think Jimmy, he's unavailable in the regular season. He doesn't play at a great enough level in the regular season to carry the Heat. And in the playoffs, he has these Cinderella runs, but we forget about the times where he's gotten swept.
This is where I don't want to hear you speak.
He's gotten outscored by Bryn Forbes in the playoffs.
This is where I don't want to hear you speak, because we understand when Jimmy Butler is healthy, he goes on runs and he elevates in the playoffs. Jimmy Butler, to me, is a Miami Heat. I feel like we've seen this tenure with Miami and Jimmy Butler. To me, although they haven't won a championship, given roster construction, it's been a success. I see Jimmy Butler and understand the durability is a huge problem. And of course, that's what's kind of derailed the Miami Heat's regular seasons these past 2 years. However, when Jimmy is healthy with Bam Adebayo, of course, Tyler Hero really hasn't been the most available, but that trio of Spo, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo is one of the better in basketball. I think they will give him an extension. I feel like we understand Bam is a great player. He is not Jimmy Butler. They need Jimmy Butler if they want to continue to have success. If you don't bring in Jimmy, what are we going to do to help build around Bam Adebayo? That's the real question.
I think the Heat, I think the Heat have been mostly smart about how they've built teams. They've just been one of the better run organizations. Over the last couple of years, I think you could put a question mark there because they've had opportunities to go out there and get superstars, or at least rumored to get superstars, and they haven't been able to. Jimmy Butler turns 35 in September. When you give him an extension, he's going to be 36. That's a very, very old age to give a dude $50+ million a season for on a team that none of us have in the top 4 in the East, maybe even the top 5 in the Eastern Conference. And I get it, 2 years ago, A seed went to the championship. Shit doesn't happen. So like if that's what we're holding our hat on, like, well, they did it when Jimmy Butler was healthy as an 8 seed, that feels like an anomaly more so than something that's going to happen again in the future.
One culture fit I love is with the Rockets and Ime Udoka.
Okay.
If he leaves Miami, I think the Rockets
A
would pay
short-term
him.
deal, like 2 years, you know, like where he could go. He doesn't have to mess with the young guys too much, but gives you like a little bubble there where you could compete. I like that.
And the number 1 free agent is Kyrie Irving, who has a player option.
I feel like Dallas. I feel like he found a home in Dallas. I'd be surprised if he left. But also, if Dallas comes up short, they just went to the championship, right? So expectations change. Last year, if Dallas won a playoff series where they went to the WCF, oh my God. If Dallas goes into next season and they just win in the first round, people are going to point fingers. People are going to say what went wrong. And that's the only area I think that maybe Kyrie could kind of see a door open there. But other than that, if he performs in the playoffs like he has for a majority of his career, I think Dallas is home.
It's going to be locked up. He's going to go back to Dallas. I really am not thinking twice about it.
Dallas loves him. He loves Dallas. And he's coming back for redemption this year, trying to win the NBA championship.
He wasn't that great in the playoffs.
He'll be better.
He's got to elevate.
And Luka will be healthy.
These last few times he's been in the playoffs, he's been a dropper.
He was really bad in the finals.
He was. And that's going to do it for our top 8 free agents in the summer of 2025. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.